You probably know about CVs is that they are primarily academic documents, and they are the format typically you see in universities. Other kinds of CVs are called resumes and a variety of different names, but the important thing is that you may have experiences, and particularly it's useful early in your career to create a functional CV. And a functional CV is different than the usual academic CV. The usual academic CV just has work experience and where you were. You were at the City University of New York for this year to this year, and your title was this, and that's it. It doesn't say what you did. It doesn't say whether you were teaching or you were doing research or both. A functional CV is different. It would have that information, but it would also have 5 or 6 bullets of the things that you accomplished. You participated in a self-study for your department. You managed a budget of $5 million. Whatever it was, you can list it, all of the functions of the job. Now, as Dr. Solomon explained, there are a variety of experiences that you've had, and you should enumerate these. And you should probably get some editing help from one of us to be able to condense those bullets to one line. And this provides any reader a summary of what your experience included. And you can embellish it as well. And there are subtle ways to do that. Joe, do you have any comments, or Art?
I think as Dr. Chamberlain says, this is a sales document. You have a limited period of time where you have the reader's attention. So you need to be bold in what you say. You need to be honest with what you say. You can accentuate and elaborate, but if you're called on the carpet and asked to back it up, you better have something to back it up. So be honest. It's a sales document. You've got to put a lot of information down in a very limited space. It sounds easy because, well, I only have to write a couple of pages. It's probably more difficult to write 2 pages than it is to write 12. So it's going to be a challenge, and it takes time and get advice, and it'll take a number of iterations before you get it in its final form.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you're applying to a school or interviewing for a job or whatever, one of the things that the person across the table from you is trying to decide is, why do I not want this person? You know, what are the things that stick out that I don't want this person for? So my advice on the CV is it should accentuate your strengths, and you should be extremely positive. You should be extremely positive in what you say, you know. And it should lead to, in those interviews, your ability to use narrative about that. And, you know, as I was reading that first summary statement there, for Rebecca, one of the things that I think that Amma was emphasizing, and I might suggest to say, is, you know, you were amazingly resilient in figuring out solutions in a difficult, in a difficult situation. That's not the exact words that I would use, but you were put in a situation where you had to come up, make lemonade when you didn't have any lemons. So and you did it, and so that's why I'd want to hire you, and you loved it. You know, when in your presentation, it came through how much you loved it, and so that positivity, you know, I can really make out of a bad situation something really good. I'm amazingly resilient, and you can count on me, and I love what I do. And so those are things I'd say, I want to hire this person. I want to have them in our school. I want to have them as a graduate of our school.
Another point, if you're applying for a job, you'll have read over what they're looking for, what the company's looking for. Try to put those points in your resume. So if they're probably looking for people with good communication skills, well, Dr. Chamberlain says, try to find where you've had to rely on the communication skills. Your summer experience would be a great place to embellish that. So play your resume to the job.
Excellent point. Tailor your resume to the job, and we also tailor our recommendations to the position. So last week I got a request from University of Michigan Comprehensive Cancer Center asking about one of our previous CEESP students. I was traveling, airports, and so on. And they said, if you want to have this on the phone, we would welcome that. Have this on the phone means if you have negative stuff about the candidate, you can say it on the phone. So I replied and I said, I'm traveling between airports, but I cannot miss this opportunity to write positively and enthusiastically about Joe Gondon, who was the student last year. And I read the position, they mentioned the position in the email, and I mentioned what he did in Morocco, from designing the study, to finishing the study, to submitting a manuscript for publication, to dealing with incomplete and inconsistent data, to working independently and in teams, to all what they are looking for. Once I wrote these 2 paragraphs, they offered him the job. So it's important to give us the wording that we can write in recommendations about your persistence, your completion of the job, and you feed us what we write in your recommendations.
This is probably not for any of you right now, but if you're ever applying for a federal job on USA Jobs, there's actually a more specific way you have to make your CV, which, like, you know, fellows at the NIH end up doing a bunch of trainings on this, but it's just something to note. And so if you ever do apply for a job using that, like, you're more than welcome to contact me and I can give you some advice, but it's sort of different than what you do here.
The editor at the table, proofread, 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 get somebody else to proof, somebody you trust. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you see a typo, a misspelled word, it's like major red flag.
No, I got one, I told people last night about this, but I got one the other day that was really poorly spelled. And so just right away, you kind of just say, well, this person clearly isn't very accurate, and especially in epidemiology, if they're doing an analysis like that, you're really concerned.
So if you're going to be looking for jobs, what types of jobs would be available for someone like you finishing an MPH? Because we have 9 MPH students. If you're going to be going to a PhD program, you need to write good statement. And you need to get references from faculty who will cover different areas. If you need 3 letters, each faculty should cover a specific area who would know you from different experiences. You should also highlight why you are interested in this program and why you want to continue in this program. Now with the SOFA's application, it's more general, so you are not going to tailor it to a specific program, but you're going to write more general program. But you should show your strengths, your passion, what you are looking for. If you are applying to a specific program and they don't have faculty in this area, they don't have cancer epidemiology faculty in this area, it's not going to work. You should target the programs. You should also be looking for faculty who have funding, so you can get the research data for your dissertation and also the funding if the school does not provide funding. Also, you should be reading about the graduate college fellowships of this university. In Michigan, we had the Merit Fellowship, and other universities have fellowships for students in certain situations. If you are doing international global health work, you should phrase this international experience in terms of how this could be applicable to domestic experience, because not everyone is interested in global, and you don't want to minimize your chance. So if you are applying to a PhD program, Dr. Chamberlain was talking this morning about applying to positions at cancer centers, and he's going to talk to you about the differences between cancer centers, but we have several of our alumni who are working in cancer centers as coordinators of research studies. It's a good idea to get experience into field epidemiology and public health, practical public health, before you apply to school. Get more publications. If you have more publications, or at least one publication from this CEESP experience, it shows that you designed the study, you implemented the study, you understand the ins and outs of the data, the limitations of the data, and then you reach the final line of publications, which is not part of schools of public health. We were struggling with different schools of public health about publications because it's not required. We are not getting MPH students here to publish, but if they publish, it's a great experience, but it's not part of the curriculum. And Michigan now has a course on scientific writing. After so many years of fighting for this, they have now a course on scientific writing. But it's important. You're going to read writing in any field, in any job. Bob, do you want to talk about cancer centers?
Well, one of the credentials you have now is the label cancer research. And there are a variety of opportunities in the field of cancer for people with masters, PhDs, MDs, and so forth. I don't know if you're aware, but the National Cancer Institute, maybe 40 or 50 years ago, started creating designated cancer centers. So a typically university and university hospital would submit an application to the National Cancer Institute for designation as a NCI cancer center. There are 2 levels of these cancer centers. The top level is a comprehensive cancer center. And by comprehensive, it means it covers everything from treatment, research, trials work, population science, etc., etc. The second is a lower level, but it is a designated cancer center that is specialized in usually just 1 or 2 areas. But they are typically affiliated with universities. Some are, well, the earliest were the 3 Roswell Park Cancer Center in Buffalo, the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, and what was that? Memorial Sloan Kettering here in New York. They were loosely affiliated with universities. Now almost all new cancer centers are affiliated with universities or embedded within a university. And some of them are freestanding, like the first 3 that I mentioned, and others are essentially a matrix. So within a hospital university setting, a variety of departments would have specialists whose primary work is in cancer. And so the director of the cancer center creates a matrix and plugs in the various faculty and treating physicians who do cancer work. But these centers are sometimes quite large. The MD Anderson Cancer Center has about 22,000 employees. has, when I joined them in 1988, they had about 200 faculty. We thought that was really large. Now they have about 2,500 faculty. And all they do is cancer. But the research opportunities there, particularly for people with masters in public health, are as research coordinators, managing the day-to-day operations of a variety of research projects. Typically, research projects are externally funded in these cancer centers, so it's a 5-year budget and a 5-year job. Sometimes they are renewed, sometimes not. I have known people that have been cancer project coordinators over an entire career and have worked in a wide variety of research projects. Many of you are familiar with cohorts. These are long-term enrollments and follow-up of typically patients or highly susceptible individuals, and they're contacted every year, and somebody has to run those projects. In Houston at the MD Anderson Cancer Center, we started a Mexican-American cohort because the history of cancer in Mexican-American families was really unknown. Now we have about 8,000 families enrolled. They're contacted every year. And we've had 3 project coordinators and about 22 or 23 other employees. But these are typically scientific management jobs. The 5 or 6 faculty that are involved, they don't spend every day working on this project, but the project managers do. And the salaries are pretty good, maybe $50,000 to $80,000 a year. And it's a good career path within a cancer center. Experience really does count, and many of you would qualify for these kinds of positions. Another thing that I might mention, and you can find out about cancer centers by going on the NCI website. They're located mostly in major cities, but there are great opportunities. The other thing I wanted to mention was employment in clinical trials. I don't know if you're familiar with the way clinical trials are typically conducted in cancer, but they're often done through cooperative groups. And cooperative groups, and there are about, I think, 9 major cooperative groups. Sometimes they're very specific, like the Children's Oncology Group. They just do pediatric cancer studies. And like there's the Southwest Oncology Group. There's the Eastern Group. There's many of them, Radiation Therapy Oncology Group. But these are organizations that are typically funded by big grants from the National Cancer Institute to carry out trials. The membership are typically faculty members from all over North America, and they cooperate with one another to carry out a particular trial protocol. So they get together and decide, well, we need to do a trial on maybe it's the reduction of untoward side effects from a chemo intervention. But the number of eligible patients at the various locations around the country aren't individually adequate. You know, Dr. X raises his hand and says, I think I could enroll maybe 8 patients this year. Well, the study's going to require 200. So obviously, you get colleagues together in various locations, You carry out the same trial everywhere with the same protocol, the same eligibility requirements, and you put all the data together. Well, you put the data together at the data center for the trials group. I've been involved for many years with the RTOG, Radiation Therapy Oncology Group. They are typically the radiation oncologists. And they began by doing radiation studies, but now they do a variety of studies. Almost all involve some kind of chemo intervention. Many of them involve interventions like yoga as a adjuvant therapy. So they have a headquarters in Philadelphia. They employ something over 150 people, most of whom have master's degrees in public health. Some of them are statisticians, others are questionnaire designers. They work in teams. But the data all come to them, and they are the people that put together the final tables. And it's a great occupation. And many people have their entire career within a particular trials group. The Southwest Oncology Group is headquartered in the data centers in Seattle. It started I think in San Antonio many, many years ago. But all of the clinical fellows in oncology left San Antonio and they went elsewhere. And they decided they still wanted to be a part of the Southwest Oncology Group, even though they were in Boston. So the names of these groups, although they may sound like they're regional, they are all national. So that's something to look into. All of this information is available on the web if you search it out. But these are great opportunities. And especially a great way to start your career if you don't want to go into a university position, and they typically pay a little bit more. So. Sure.
So one of the experiences we've had here with students that have bachelor's degrees taking jobs at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and after 6 months they're eligible for free tuition, or they'll pick up their tuition for their own master's degree. So I would imagine there's similar levels. If you go in at a master level, they may help support more advanced education. So I would definitely keep an eye out for that.
Dr. Volkman talked yesterday about the pre-doctoral program of NCI, and this is a wonderful opportunity. You want to talk more about it?
Well, I mean, like I said yesterday, we do hire at many different levels, and sometimes it's based on postings. So like our research assistant positions will advertise. But then like with a pre-doctoral degree, often you kind of have to start a connection with a researcher there, and then they can give you dissertation, like a dissertation project, and usually you do that on site at NCI. So you just kind of need to start a connection with someone that way. But then we also sometimes hire people with a master's to kind of just work, you know, and be like a post-bac fellow and maybe doing, you know, literature reviews or things. But it's, if you keep checking our website, we often have a lot of opportunities there. And then we also, you know, hire people as postdocs, and, you know, there's lots and lots of opportunities all the time. So it's good to keep checking. And also you can look at other institutes too. So sometimes, you know, NIAID may have an opportunity that's also applicable, so you certainly want to kind of look across the NIH. Not anymore. Yeah, so there was a Yale NCI program where PhD students at Yale would then do their coursework at Yale and come to NCI to finish. That finished because they thought it was giving an unfair advantage to Yale, I guess. But so now when we do a pre-doc student, it's more through a connection and seeing if there's similar interests and if the project would be beneficial, mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I have a question. So you mentioned that the students can either apply for the postbac or the pre-doctoral programs. So I want to ask you, it's just a personal question. I did 2 years postbac program at NIH before I came to GW. So would you recommend I go straight to the pre-doctoral track after I finish my MPH at GW?
It's kind of up to you. There is one limitation, is you're only allowed, I believe, and I don't know the rules because I'm, just, working there, but there's a certain limit of time you're allowed to be considered that Cancer Research Training Associate or IRTA. There's an IRTA, CERTA, sorry, all the acronyms, but there's only, I think you can only do 5 years as that, so you might also want to figure that out beforehand, and I can connect you with the people that might have a good idea of how that works. But I know that postdocs, for example, they can only stay for a certain amount of time in that position, and then they either need to be promoted or they have to leave because there's a time limit on staying in that trainee type position.
For someone in the pre-doctoral level, do
Yeah.
you recommend that they approach investigators or they go to the Office of Education? Because I know you have an Office of Education.
Yeah, you can do both. Often the Office of Education usually takes the applications, I think, for postdocs. Like that's kind of sort of the way it works. But if you can contact an investigator and there does seem to be a mutual interest, they also can take care of a lot of that. So we get a lot of unsolicited emails from people, which then we kind of look and see if we have a position, because even if someone's ideal, we're only allowed a certain number of fellows at a time, and you really want that too. That's a really good thing, because if a mentor takes too many at the same time, you're not getting the kind of attention you really should be getting. So they really are very cautious about not overloading themselves. So we take people's applications and look and see if there is a fit, and if there's not, sometimes we'll send it to someone else that we know is looking for someone. And so, you can kind of do both. And I can give you the information it's Jackie Levine in our division. That's the Office of Education. But.
DCEG, the Division of Epidemiology and Cancer Genetics, has many investigators who have international projects. So you could approach the investigators who have international studies, and this is a natural fit for you. You went to a foreign country, you conducted a study, you know field epidemiology. This is a straightforward story if they have money.
Yeah, one of the other things that I've found in life is that a lot of things come from networking. And so this is if the students over the years, the 11 years of this program, can skate together and allow each other to know about potential opportunities, that's a great advantage to being in this program. So that's number one. And number two, there's certain organizations that you go to where you learn about jobs. So American Public Health Association, would be for people with the MPHs, would be a good thing to join, and then just get to know people in the field and what's going on. So that's one point I was going to make. The other point I was going to make, as Bob was talking about cancer centers, each cancer center has its own culture, and actually each department within, so for instance, cancer centers aren't, you think about cancer as a broad topic, but it's so wide. And so there's everything from prevention to behavioral health studies to, to end-of-life stuff, to clinical trials. So the cancer has a very broad, So one of the things that I would suggest as you're investigating cancer centers is for you to do homework on the place you might be interested in. And you find out what it's like, what the culture is, what the stuff they're doing there, you might want them. I'd be really excited to work at MD Anderson in the prevention work because they're doing stuff on obesity and cancer. I'm really interested in that, Or, St. Jude Children's has an unbelievable program. We heard, people did stuff at St. Jude. They have an unbelievable program in international pediatric oncology. I'd love to get love to get myself into that and be related to that. So, look at what is it that would excite you about being at MD Anderson, and Memorial Sloan Kettering, or some other place, and what do you bring to them? That's in a very positive way as you construct your letter to them with your CV. You sort of say, wow, I see that you're doing projects in Argentina, say, and this is what I can bring to you, with this. If I could actually return to the CV, is that okay for a second? Because the subject was supposed to be CV. And so, just from what I heard and thinking about Rebecca, I would say in skills, you ought to write fluent in Swahili there, or whatever other languages you might be fluent in. Because that's going to, as Alma said, that's a differentiator, that people are going to want that for things. And also I'd write skills, and all of you can write this: oral presentations at national meetings, oral podium presentations at national, So I think you want to say, here are all my assets that I can bring to you, and that's why you're going to want me. But as you're thinking about that, and if you do go to an interview, one of the questions they always ask is, tell me about your strengths, and you go and you babble on about those things. And then they say, tell me about your weaknesses, and you go, one of the things to do to prepare for those things is to think about the answers to those questions, and really give an honest answer. And frankly, one way to handle weaknesses is to say, I realize this about myself, that I'm shy, and what I've been trying to do is work, and you tell a story, that I know that I'm shy, and I'm working on this sort of approach to improve myself in this particular area. That business of telling stories is also key. So in interviews, you tell them stories, and you tell them positive stories, because they stick with people. That's why I want to hire Rebecca, because she was in Tanzania, and God, it was really hard, and she had this amazing resilience and creativity and stuff, and I want that at my place. I want to work with somebody like that, And so those are the type of stories that sort of stick in your head.
The topic of professional organizations has come up this morning, and I'd recommend that you consider joining a professional organization. Many of them have reduced dues for students, and many of them have accompanying journals that may be a place you'd like to publish. I've belonged for many years to the American Association for Cancer Education and the American Society of Preventive Oncology. Both of those organizations welcome students at the master's and PhD level. But just joining and reading the journal and going to annual meetings is really not quite enough. You should consider becoming a part of the leadership of the organization. Most of these have multiple committees, and they are hungry for graduate student participation of the graduate student members. So many of these committees actually have a designated slot for a student. And serving on these committees can put you in direct contact with the other senior members of the committee. And that's the kind of interaction that is a great benefit, because these are contacts that will be lifelong, very often. So consider doing that. I learned that one of the largest committees of both of these organizations that I belong to was the review committee for applications for presentations at the annual meeting. And so everybody had 5 or 6 or 10 abstracts to review and score. And then the committee gets together on a group telephone call or sometimes in person, and you go over all of these abstracts that you liked or didn't like. And those conversations are very educational. It teaches you something about how to write your own abstracts. But I do recommend professional organizations as a good first step in your career. So find an organization that sort of meshes with your interests.
One of the points that Dr. Chamberlain touched on is professional organizations and also networking. And it's important to have a mentoring group for you. I remember when I first wrote my Career Development Award at MD Anderson, Dr. Chamberlain said, let's work on your mentoring committee. And I didn't know what he was talking about was mentoring committee. So for my mentoring committee, I had Stan Hamilton from pathology. I had people from epidemiology. I had someone from behavioral science. And having mentors from different fields is important for you. It's not going to be enriching to your experience if all your mentors are from epidemiology. You learn more when you have people from different fields and different backgrounds, and they add to your learning and experience. And Dr. Chamberlain talked about AACE and ASPO, and both organizations have experts from different fields. And your engagement into an association where you have members from different fields is very important. One of our students from last year, Emily Ewarter and Mario Trejo, they came to AACE last year. They are now leading the mentoring group of students with AACE. They are looking for leadership positions with the organization. And maybe you don't think about it now at your level, but eventually later on, these will be the people writing letters for you for promotion and tenure and whatever. It's not just in your field.
Well, a topic that came up yesterday was, for those of you in master's programs, do you need a PhD? And my answer is sure. Of course. And I can tell you many stories of people that did not get PhDs but later did, and it launched a completely new trajectory for them. I worked with a woman who had a master's degree in public health. Early in my career, I had a PhD, and she was busy with new family, children, and such. And I said, consider getting a PhD. And she said, well, I don't have the proper preparation to go into a PhD program in epidemiology and biologic science and so forth. And she explained that she had early in her career been a teacher. And I said, well, why don't you get a doctoral degree in education? They'll still call you doctor, and you will be unique within a cancer center, and you'll be very much in demand for a variety of opportunities. she did that and part-time. She is now a leader in cancer education, in behavioral science in particular, and is a nationally known individual. And I can tell you other interesting stories about people that have done this in mid-career or early in their career. But I recommend that you look at your opportunities to get a doctoral degree. It will remove a certain ceiling that you would experience otherwise in your career. And if you want to go that direction, many of us can give you advice.
I would like to slightly respectfully disagree with you, because I think it depends on what you want to do in the end. And I think that some people go and get a PhD and then end up getting jobs that would have only required a master's degree. And so I think that I don't think the general consensus should be that everyone should get a PhD, because there aren't necessarily all the academic jobs or really senior level jobs, and there are certain positions in health departments or more applied epidemiology that maybe don't require the PhD. So I think it's more thinking about long term about what each of your career goals are, but like Bob said, is you can always go back and get a PhD. So if there is that limitation and you see that there is a ceiling in the position you want, you certainly could go back and get a PhD. But I don't think the general idea should be that everyone does, because it might not be necessary.
Good point. And I want to follow on this because maybe you are comfortable with your job doing the coordination of programs and you don't have to go the PhD. Maybe you can work in different places. It depends on you and your personality and what you want to do. Maybe in this program we choose the top candidates, which we are criticized for when we get the grant reviewed, that you're not doing a fantastic job, you're getting excellent students and making them stars. You are not getting students who are not achieving and making them successful. Yes, and I like to work with stars and I like to make stars, and you see the stars here, so this is rewarding. I want to mention 2 points here. I remember one point Dr. Chamberlain told me about, in your early career, it's important to be in a strong place where you can leave from. I remember when I went to University of Michigan and they introduced me as a new faculty. David Schottenfeld, the famous David Schottenfeld, came to me and said, when you introduce yourself, you need to say that you're coming from MD Anderson. And I didn't understand what he meant, but to them, it meant that they are getting someone from MD Anderson. It makes a difference. It makes a difference if you are in a prestigious, strong place that you can leave from. The other point is that the strong places also will push you hard to write and publish, and you will be in an environment where you are surrounded by people who are making you work harder. But it's also an opportunity for your career planning and career advancement. At MD Anderson, when he had his pre-docs and postdocs, before maybe from the first year, they write their career development award. There is no excuse. You're going to leave from here to a faculty position, well-funded, and so on. And maybe we want to hear from Dr. Cantor about her strong places that she was at and how each place was helpful being in a strong place for the pre-doctoral and the postdoctoral.
Well, I don't know what to say specifically on that topic, but I think that I learned a lot from all of the places. I mean, from my grand tour of schools of public health. And I think the thing that I value most is that I had a lot of different types of mentors, and I think that that's really a benefit. I wouldn't say that my mentors pushed me hard in the way that one might imagine that they pushed you hard. I think that they just facilitated that, and I think that having mentors, for example, who respond to you quickly, like when you send a manuscript, somebody who's going to get back to you, you know, in a reasonable amount of time, that really makes a difference. I have seen people who, you know, might work with somebody who doesn't do that, and then that slows down their whole progression. So I think that there are a lot of different ways in which your mentors can support you, and I think at those bigger institutions, sometimes people have less teaching responsibilities, which can also mean that they're spending more time on research. And I think that you would need to think about, too, whether you want to be teaching or doing research or what sort of combination you would be looking for, because seeing how your mentor balances their time and how they're doing so successfully can really be things that you can learn from as you move forward. I don't think I answered the question, really. But yeah, you know, and I think being adaptable really matters too. So when I went to Harvard, my first mentor that I had moved to be on a cancer epi training grant, and she left after the first year. And I love her. We have a great relationship. Emily knows her now that she's at NCI. And that meant that I had to figure out what I was going to do in that second year. And thankfully, I had already reached out to my mentor, my second mentor, Ed Giovannucci, to work with him on a separate analysis. And so I already had somebody who could step in and be my second mentor. And he's, you know, still somebody that I work with. And actually, in fact, I still work with both of them. So I think that I think that those large institutions have a lot of opportunities because there are a lot of mentors and a lot of people who can support you. But again, I don't know that I'm specifically answering the direct question, but I think also at Harvard, I worked with the Nurses' Health Study and Health Professionals Follow-Up Study, but I only did one paper when I was there using that data. I actually wanted to kind of create my own path and find my own way, so I did papers on NHANES data. I did papers in the Southern Community Cohort Study with my first mentor, Lisa. I came up with my dosing idea, got in the CRN Scholars Program, went to Sweden for a month and did a project there. I tried to really diversify in that time because I didn't want all of my eggs in one basket, and I also wanted to find my path and find what I loved while I had mentorship. So I felt like I was having the opportunity with Training Wheels to find my own way while I still had Ed, who I could email and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, you know, is this a crazy idea or a good idea? So.